My latest book, While We Bleed, is now available for pre-order. In this Renaissance-inspired action fantasy, an infamous mercenary escapes his last job with his life, but not his memory. After learning to be a better man, his violent past catches up with him, and he must resurrect the bastard he once was to put things right. The ebook is only 99 cents and releases November 3rd, but if you pre-order today, it'll really help get my day one numbers up, so please check it out and leave a review.
In this painting, I insult my own genius.
Piece of trash, if you ask me.
The Lord Regent's mistress sat for a portrait with Sokolov.
People have the worst taste.
That wild painting. Striking. Mother would love it.
So this is art? Awful lousy way to make coin.
Delilah had a talent for imagining the world as a better place.
Part of Dishonored's enduring legacy is its art direction. The game's graphical resolution is not impressive, and wasn't even when it was released in 2012. Instead, it relies on a unique visual style, evoking oil and watercolor paintings that give it a timeless quality, even with its grotesquely oversized hands. Some screenshots could pass for paintings themselves. In addition to the art of the game, the art in the game adds to the world building and immersion without adding a single spoken or written word. Paintings are encountered throughout, and even play a large part in the story at several points. Some are collectible, some lead you to hidden treasures, and some are just cool. Here's a look at some of the more important paintings found in all the games. The major paintings in Dishonored 1 are the collectible paintings by Anton Sokolov, created in the real world by Cedric Peyraverne. Sokolov is the quintessential Renaissance man, scientist, inventor, physician, and painter. Aristocrats clamor over each other to get him to paint their portraits, and art dealers hide them behind locked safes. Interestingly, all his paintings' titles include a mathematical or geometric phrase. At the very beginning of the game, we find Sokolov painting the isometry of High Overseer Thaddeus Campbell, who he says is no beauty, and the job insults his own genius. Famously, he uses a decanter of cider to distract the eye away from his subject, and if you take it, Sokolov will paint it out of the picture when you encounter it later. In the mission to eliminate Campbell, it can be found in his secret room. If you follow Campbell and Kurnow down there, Campbell describes it as an early Sokolov before giving his expert artistic analysis, even though we just saw it being painted 6 months before. But Campbell's that singular kind of psychopath who doesn't know what he's talking about, yet still craves admiration even from those he hates and is planning to murder. The Golden Cat mission contains 3 paintings, all in the art dealer Bunting's apartment. Light along the inverse curve is Sokolov's self-portrait, and he portrays himself as a dour, dwarvish figure hunched over his own obsession. One of the gangsters says he remembers having seen this painting at his grandma's house, so it might not be considered as artistically valuable as the others, though all paintings are worth 300 coins. Dowd and the Parabola of Lost Seasons is interesting since it seems at some point Dowd allowed himself to be seen long enough to be painted. He wears the same color as his whaler henchman, not red, so it might be from an earlier time before he was famous and feared as the Knife of Dunwall. The reference to Lost Seasons foreshadows the regret Dowd expresses later in the game. Custis, Morgan, and the Postulate Child shows all 3 Pendleton brothers, but with Trevor in the background, sullen, forgotten, and not even named in his own portrait. This perfectly encapsulates the relationship between the brothers, and after their elimination, Trevor hopes to have Sokolov paint another portrait.
Just me this time.
This painting is locked behind Bunting's wall safe. The obtuse arguments of Lady Boyle is found in Sokolov's apartment in the mission to abduct him. It shows one of the Boyle women who is the Lord Regent's mistress from behind, concealing her identity, which changes with each playthrough. In addition to the gameplay reason, the facelessness of Boyle mirrors the masked ball you will attend, as well as the nature of the aristocracy, where name and rank is far more important than individual attributes. The Masquerade Ball mission offers 2 paintings. Vera Moray and the affix of her skin portrays Granny Rags as a younger woman before she went blind and mad, but still wearing the same hair brooch and green eyeshadow. She carries a sour expression, an aristocratic lady who takes her position very seriously. Her hand shows no outsider's mark, so it may have been painted before her trip to Pandyssia, or perhaps Sokolov just left it out. The title's reference to her skin may suggest the latter. The other painting is the Spymaster's Axis of Asymmetry, found in whatever room belongs to his mistress for that mission. He's shown in a regal, powerful stance, with his red authoritarian banner draped behind him. The title shows it was painted before he took over as Lord Regent, so this reveals his ambitions early on. If Empress Jessamine had seen this painting, she might have taken a bit more care around him. The Empress and the Empty set is found in Dunwall Tower when we return there to eliminate the Regent, in a room across from the royal bedroom. Jessamine is shown standing stiffly, at a greater distance than subjects in other paintings, and doesn't seem to fit in with her surroundings. She doesn't look terribly pleased with being painted, perhaps reflecting her discomfort with the trappings of her role. Or maybe she just can't wait to let her hair down, as Corvo once says. There are 3 paintings in the Flooded District mission. The commutative Rats and the Weeper is found in one of the buildings soon after escaping imprisonment. It shows a plague victim in advanced stages of the disease, with rats nearby. As we know, rats will not attack Weepers. The pale skin and vacant, blooded eyes, as well as the sickly color palette, reflect the despair the plague has brought to the city, and it's not hard to imagine Sokolov finding a subject for this painting, though it's likely the real subject was safely behind bars or heavily drugged, perhaps one of his own test subjects. The Torturer's quaternionic groan is found in the Red Shore Chamber of Commerce building, aka Doubt's hideout, as you exit the mission section. Royal Interrogator Morris Sullivan is placed ironically amid an idyllic scene of trees and flowers, with his mute, cruel expression staring darkly out at us. One muscled arm shows a tattoo and his eyes are left partly in shadow. Perhaps oblique references to the outsider's mark and to blindness, neither of which he has but Granny Rags does, from whom he derives some powers through arcane bond. The final collectible painting in Dishonored is The Outsider and the Circumscribed Void, found in Granny Rags' lair under the Flooded District. You can only get this painting if you engage with her in a previous mission. This painting is unique because it portrays the outsider floating in the void, but without a discernible face. All around him are vague symbols that seem to resemble, in some cases, mathematical equations. We know that Sokolov desperately wants to meet the outsider, performing all sorts of rituals and incantations to conjure him, but without success. Sokolov has no subject to sit for this portrait, so he's left with a faceless, mythical figure described by others, surrounded by useless formulas that do nothing for him. The image is also missing a left hand, where the mark would be. This might be Sokolov's most personal work, revealing his frustration with just not being interesting enough for the outsider to appear to him. There are multiple non-collectible paintings in Dishonored that add to the environment in other ways. Some of these, such as rat lights, arc pylons, or alternate versions of Caldwin's Bridge, are in fact concept art that was used in the game itself. Many depict Dunwall as it was being conceived. This video won't delve into all the concept art, or it would be far too long. Other paintings show landscapes, mountains, or ruins, all hinting at the wider world and its past. The industrial decay of the plague is set against a history stretching back to ancient days that we only get a glimpse of, but makes the world that much more real. Other paintings show the contemporary world. The Lord Regent on the steps of the Dunwall Tower entrance has been sliced up into several smaller paintings throughout the game, focusing on different subjects within the whole. One painting shows what might be the only portrayal of a horse in the game. Almost. In the wealthy merchant Pratchett's house, a city street scene reveals the hustle and bustle of modern life, and also a clue to his safe combination. Another is given in the almost monochrome whale slaughterhouse, a place we'll visit soon in the DLC. And finally, a majestic Tivian whaling ship, anchored on the ice, or perhaps stranded. In addition to paintings, there are, especially at the Golden Cat, sketches of the various women who've passed through there over the years, and these are partly the concept art for the prostitutes you encounter in the area. One is supposedly a reference to one of Lee Nahidi's previous characters. Finally, Emily's drawings appear in between various missions, showing not only her impressions of events, but also the player's chaos level. You see portrayals of Jessamine, the Golden Cat, and the Hound Pits pub, and Dunwall Tower, as well as Corvo and his actions out in the city, in low or high chaos. Emily's comments and attitude are also chaos dependent, showing the effect the player's actions have on the impressionable girl. In the Knife of Dunwall and Brigmore Witches, you encounter the witch Delilah. She was an apprentice of Sokolov in years past and became an accomplished painter herself, though with a very different style, one so modern as to seem almost alien compared to the traditional pieces we've seen so far. Her paintings are not collectible in these games, though you do see them in a few places. They are created by real-life artist Veronique Mignot. In Barrister Timsh's house we find Delilah's self-portrait, My Name on Their Lips, a chaotic jumble of colors with wisps of thorny vines or flame swirling behind her. The image and title reflect her obsessive need to be loved and admired by her followers. This painting is collectible in the Grand Palace mission of Dishonored 2. There is also The Strings on His Back, a portrait of Timsh himself. He stands in a suit with a cigar, his hair whipping back behind, while Delilah's power swirls behind him. Not literal strings, but the power she has over him. Delilah enchants the barrister in order to snag his family fortune, then discards him. Delilah enters the void through paintings that she can bring to life. Dowd pursues her to her gallery and, using the magic lantern, opens the way through the painting Where It Opened and I Entered. It shows the very gallery it's located in, with a void rift in the floor, and wind pulling in blank canvases and tattered Brigmore family banners whipping among them. It's a stark image of her bringing her own power through the portal to serve her will, while the symbols of the crumbling Brigmore Manor and the rest of the world remain anchored behind. In the void there are two paintings. Her Face Is My Smile is Delilah's masterwork, the painting of Emily through which she will possess the girl and rule in her body. As with Timsh's painting, Emily's cherubic face is surrounded with expressions of Delilah's power emanating outward, another puppet for her to control. The colors grow hotter and brighter the closer it gets to her head, to her mind where Delilah will reside, and the eyes are red and coldly calculating. In Delilah's self-portrait, her right hand is relatively normal, while her left is abstract, elongated, and ethereal, almost demonic. In Emily's painting, it's the opposite. On the way to the void, Dowd finds studies of the final product that practice getting it just right. This painting is also collectible in Dishonored 2. To defeat this fate, Dowd swaps the painting with Her Branches Reach For Me, a depiction of the great tree that exists in this part of the void along with the little islands around it. The tree swirls with power of its own, and when Delilah completes the ritual, she is forcibly merged with the environment she's created in the void, saving Emily and trapping Delilah for, well, a while anyway. Two of Delilah's paintings appear in the Dunwall archives, but not in the games themselves, as far as anyone can find. I Am the Ruin of His House is a portrait of Dowd, though it's hard to tell with all the abstract elements around him. But you can make out his face scar. His eyes are solid, without pupils, and his face is surrounded by red shards. You can easily imagine she painted this while planning his downfall through subverting Billy Lurk. They are the only two whalers to wear red, so this could express the chaotic clash of the two master assassins that Delilah had planned at the end of the Knife of Dunwall. His mark upon my flesh is Delilah's portrait of the outsider, who granted her his mark in 1831. Unlike other paintings, the periphery here is black, representing the void in all its hunger and simultaneous emptiness. He is the only swath of color, his humanity being eaten away by the void around him as he both draws power from it and dissolves into it. Ironically, his black eyes are rendered here with irises and pupils, shimmering and reflective, more expressive than many of her other subjects. In Dishonored 2, most of Sokolov's original paintings can be looted a second time. This video won't go over all of them again, but all paintings are now worth only 200 coins rather than 300. Perhaps competition from Silvergraphs has lowered their value. Of the 11 new Sokolov paintings, some were created by Cedric Peyraverne and some by Sergei Kolosov. The new paintings reflect the Dishonored 2 game engine itself, more photorealistic and with no background, though keeping to the original style in some ways. The subjects are usually shown with an undefined light source illuminating them from above or the side. All the new ones are collected in Karnaka. The first, The Outsider in Conditional Dreams, is found soon after arriving next to an outsider shrine in the apartment of Amadeo Monte, a secret cultist. This painting now includes a detailed close-up portrayal of the outsider complete with a face. Perhaps he finally took mercy on Sokolov and appeared to him in a dream, or maybe Sokolov interviewed enough others who had seen him to make an accurate portrait. These eyes are all black, no iris. The Vice Overseer's predictive logic comes soon after, adorning the administrative office in the Overseer building past the Wall of Light. Liam Byrne is shown in a dignified pose, his ambition and pride at being the youngest Vice Overseer ever evident in his expression, along with a cheek scar likely taken in combat of some kind. The final painting in the mission is Hypatia's Projective Gaze, in the subject's own apartment near Addermire Station. Alexandria Hypatia is shown in her work clothes with a nervous or disturbed expression, looking sideways rather than straight at the viewer. It foreshadows the conflict within her, as though she knows something is very wrong with her, but cannot face the truth of it. Duke Abel's propositional state is found in a strange location, in the Addermire Institute's main lobby just before the Wall of Light, with no one but the guards to admire it. Luca is shown in his formal regalia, to just below the waist in a quarter-turn pose, holding a monocle and casting a suspicious gaze to the side. It portrays both the arrogance of the Duke as well as the paranoia that would lead him to use a body double. On second thought, perhaps the painting is actually well placed, keeping an eye on his men and always reminding them to guard his special prize very well. Anton Sokolov in Subtractive Light is Sokolov's second self-portrait, located in the Lost and Found in the Addermire basement. This one shows the artist in his waning years and does not spare the vanity of the subject, showing him in all his decrepitude. Sokolov's regrets are written clearly on his face here, along with wispy gray hair and liver spots. This is someone who knows very well he flattered despots for their favor and experimented on innocent people. It's not hard to imagine how it ended up lost, or perhaps just thrown away in disgust. Ramsey's Stochastic Eyes is located in the lower Aventa area of the Clockwork Mansion mission. It's in the apartment of Major Bonville, who we find poisoned by Brianna Ashworth. This portrait of Mortimer Ramsey is relatively straightforward, showing him with a scowl looking straight at us. Knowing what we know of him, you can deduce that it's the resentment of losing his family's social status and wealth that's given him such a sour demeanor. This might have been concept art, since it shows him rather older than he's portrayed in the game, and he also seems to be wearing the outfit of a warfare overseer rather than a City Watch uniform. In a bloodfly-infested apartment in Upper Aventa, you find Jindosh Considers an Odd Numerator, the portrait of the Grand Inventor. This painting makes particular use of hard, angular strokes, almost like a mosaic, perhaps reflecting the machine-like workings of his mind. His expression is cold and calculating, bringing to mind Hypatia's opinion that he has all the empathy of a mantis, which the elaborate bow at his collar does nothing to soften. He looks like he's about to dissect us just to alleviate his boredom, his pale complexion adding to the effect. The blood topology of Grim Alex lies in the mansion's assessment chamber, on an easel next to Sokolov himself as we arrive to rescue him. This is an unusual painting because it shows the Crown Killer wearing a costume we never see, using the name Grim Alex, which we never hear. These are the remains of a deleted mission set in Dunwall before the coup, in which Emily confronts the Crown Killer but who, presumably, escapes. We can surmise the character would have been dressed in this way then. But without this context, some players may have been left confused. Here, Alex is shown bandaged to obscure all features, leaving only one wild eye looking out at us, though it does not glow yellow like when we confront the real Crown Killer. One wonders whether this was painted from the memory of Sokolov's abduction, or whether the killer actually sat and let him paint slowly. It's worth mentioning briefly that 2 old paintings from the first game reappear in this mission in significant spots. The portrait of Hiram Burrows is found in the apartment of Corey Brockburn, a regenter who longed for the return of the Lord Regent's reign before the Crown Killer got him. And Sokolov's earlier self-portrait hangs over Jindosh's lab desk, showing that he admires Sokolov even as he despises and envies him. The next painting in the Royal Conservatory mission is Ashworth within an existential graph. This portrait of Delilah's lieutenant is found in a bloodfly-infested apartment across from the conservatory. Like many of the antagonists, she does not look at us straight on, but casts her glance to the side with a suspicious scowl against a solid black background. Ashworth was Delilah's first follower and is completely devoted to the witch, and you can certainly see the vicious retribution she'd gladly inflict on any who threatened their goals. As curator of the Royal Conservatory, it's certainly possible she might condescend to sit for a Sokolov portrait, though it might try her patience. In the Dust District are 2 new paintings. The first is Indiscreet Time Finds Aramis Stilton, a portrait of the mining baron. It's located in the upper floor of the Overseer Outpost, which was formerly the Duncan Bales Trading Company. This is one of the more abstract paintings and was likely another piece of concept art since he looks slightly different from his final version, with a different neck tattoo. Here Stilton is looking right at us but with a heavy degree of worry. Exploring his home, we learn of his extreme insecurity about his social status, and his disdain for the absurd trappings of wealth come through in this portrait. Instead of coming from overhead, the light in this painting comes from below, highlighting the tattoo that betrays his working-class roots. The other is Paolo and the Inaccessible Cardinal, a portrait of the gang leader located in his own chambers. This might be one of the most detailed paintings in the game, with Paolo's face completely covered in lines and scars, a testament to his violent life, not to mention some very unruly ears. He looks forward toward the viewer, but the gaze is distant and unfocused, as though uncaring about what's in front of him. Paolo styles himself as a working-class champion, a charismatic figure, but this painting reveals the pain that lies underneath. Significantly, another returning painting nearby this one is the portrait of Vera More, next to an outsider shrine. Paolo holds the same woman's severed hand, which gives him his power of resurrection, as well as his saloon's name. The remaining Sokolov paintings in the game are also reappearances from the first game, usually resulting from purchases by one collector or another. Dowd's portrait appears in the former apartment of someone obsessed with the legendary assassin, next to a book about him. You can also collect 7 of Delilah's paintings in Dishonored 2. Most of these paintings are done by Sergei Kolosov and retain some stylistic connections to the earlier paintings, but are far less chaotic with a smaller color palette. The first is I Regard Her Within and Without, a portrait of Hypatia. It's located over a table in the Recuperation Theater, next to information revealing the truth of the Crown Killer. She is shown here before a background of pastels, turned partly away from the viewer, but again with a disturbed expression, and arms crossed in a defensive or self-soothing position. The title is likely a reference to her dual nature, which Delilah knows of even though Hypatia herself does not. The next is I Look Upon the Craftsman, a painting of Jindosh. It's found in his private apartment in the Clockwork Mansion. It's done mostly in green shades, and shows the inventor staring straight ahead with a blank, robotic gaze. His eyes are wide and expressionless, like the machines he creates. His face is slashed with bits of color done in hard strokes and angles. Most interestingly, his hands are rendered multiple times in varying positions and degrees of transparency. This could be a reference to his many inventions and creations. From this, we understand that Jindosh is a tool to Delilah, and as she says to Ashworth when he's eliminated,
but I doubt he had anything more to give us.
At the Royal Conservatory there are 2 of Delilah's paintings. My Fires Burn Within Brianna's Marrow is a portrait of Ashworth, located on the stairwell in the curator's office. Ashworth is shown in a seated reclining position, facing diagonally with an intent expression. Unlike in Sokolov's painting and her in-game character, her hair is not pulled up in a severe bun, but loose and flowing backward wildly. This brings to mind the earlier Delilah paintings wherein her magical power or influence is presented as swirls of flame and color extending above and behind. So this certainly references the strong connection between the two. The other is found in the basement behind a locked gate and bookcases. Her Heart I Bathed in Poison is a painting of Billy Lurk, whom Delilah suborned into betraying Dowd in The Knife of Dunwall. This painting was actually created in 2013 for the DLC, but was not used, perhaps because it might have been a spoiler, so it matches the style of the other Delilah paintings from that time. It shows Billy surrounded by, once again, swirls of wild color, signifying the power Delilah exerted over Billy at that time. Her hair seems almost on fire, burning away the life she had when she betrayed Dowd. Delilah has a set of apartments at the Grand Palace, since she holds Luca Abel in thrall. There we find 2 more paintings from 1837. My Name on Their Lips, the self-portrait which previously adorned the office of Arnold Timsch, now hangs in the Duke's office. Her Face is My Smile, Delilah's painting of Emily with which she intended to possess the girl, hangs in her private chambers. Oddly, this painting was last seen in the Void, so it's not certain how Delilah recovered it. Though in the canon ending Dowd switches it for another, so maybe he brought it back with him and sold it. The final collectible Delilah painting is Luca, His Eyes on Me, a portrait of the Duke. This is found on the Dunwall Tower grounds in the final mission, below the Waterlock Bridge. This is done in bold, primary colors with many abstract elements and angular lines as in other paintings. Luca stares straight at us with an intense expression. We can easily imagine him looking at Delilah like this, so obsessed is he with her. His hands are done in deep red, fingers arched as though deep in some plot. Another swath of red is slashed across his eyes, perhaps signifying how he sees the world, or maybe how he sees Delilah. This painting actually gives an impression of him as much less of a buffoon than he really is, so maybe this was made to flatter Luca, or to flatter Delilah herself, because of how much influence she exerts over him. In addition to these, there are several non-collectible Delilah's paintings that are encountered in the game. When she draws the player into the void in order to tell her sob story, we see 3 of these. My Father Promised Me shows Delilah as a child, desperate for the approval of her claimed father, Emperor Euhorn Kaldwin. This is the only image of the old emperor in any of the games. False Blame Cast Upon Me shows both Delilah and Jessamine as children, with the royal spymaster interrogating who broke a valuable object. According to Delilah, Jessamine was the culprit but blamed Delilah, causing her to be whipped and costing her mother her job. Finally, They Took Her From Me and Drove Me Away shows a villainous figure tossing Delilah out onto the streets after her mother's death in poverty. They survived in the workhouses until a guard broke her jaw, and Delilah could only afford a child-sized coffin. These paintings show the progression of Delilah's resentment, not only at the Kaldwin family, but the world in general. While moving through Dunwall Tower in the final mission, we find a painting of a tree in the chapel. This painting has become real, showing how Delilah was able to manifest the scenes she painted in the real world. This leads to the final painting, The World as It Should Be. This is Delilah's second masterwork, showing a world where all love and worship her, as opposed to the ruin she's made of the city so far. If the non-lethal option is taken, Delilah is trapped in another of her paintings. But this time, she has no idea it's a false world, one from which she'll make no effort to escape again. In Dishonored 1, there are between 15 and 20 non-collectible paintings in the game that exist mostly for decoration. In Dishonored 2, there are nearly 70, not even counting the many silver graphs. It's not practical to go through each one, but the broad categories and some examples from each are worthy of mention. Most of these are the work of Piotr Jablonski. Much of the art depicts the architecture of Karnaca, especially the Addermeyer Institute. In a slight contrast to the plain rectangles of Dunwall, these buildings incorporate somewhat more curvature and decorative ironwork, especially copper and bronze elements. These paintings often include the interplay of light and shadow with these buildings, casting a place in multiple moods within one image. They also often display the clash between artifice and natural elements such as rocks, cliffs, and the sea. Again, these are more photorealistic than in the first game, and indeed, in some places, it's hard to tell what's a painting and what is a screenshot from actual gameplay. Art depicting interiors often show the attempt to create an ordered space that is simultaneously bright but also shaded from the oppressive sun. Empty but tastefully appointed spaces that evoke elegance in a distinctly Serkonan style. Interestingly, many paintings include people only as an afterthought, either on the periphery of the image or blended into the background. It gives the impression of a population being swallowed up and dominated by their environment. One painting that stands out is a portrayal of the old Hound Pits pub from Dishonored 1, rendered in gorgeous orange gaslight against a midnight blue sky. It's at once foreboding and cozy, a stark reimagining of what was simply the first game's mission hub location. It wasn't a tough choice to make it the thumbnail image for this video. Other paintings focus more on everyday city life, and in particular the struggles of the working class. The brutality of the Grand Guard, the threat of dust storms, the gangs, and the blood flies all figure in these artworks, in addition to the day-to-day portrayal of other occupations. The plight of the miners is a recurring theme in a city where the Duke demands ever more and more silver to fund his lavish lifestyle. Other works are more atmospheric, showing scenes of the city at night or a shadowy alley on a sunny day. The hidden threats in a city that at first glance seems modern and grand. Great estates built on exploitation you don't see until you look just a bit closer. Some paintings veer into the positively grotesque, showing the result of bloodfly infestation or other social ills. Some focus more on the natural world, including depictions of animals found at the Royal Conservatory such as baboons and owls, woodland scenes from outside the city, or the majestic Shinderi Peak rising above Karnaca. Some paintings, both in Dunwall and Karnaca, depict ships and shipbuilding, including the ISS Jessamine, both at launch, as well as a detailed blueprint. There are a series of highly detailed black and white sketches, or perhaps engravings, showing interior and exterior scenes around Karnaca. These pictures all seem to date from an earlier time before the Industrial Revolution, and are reminiscent of early 19th century Spanish-influenced locations. Perhaps these are a glimpse into what Serkonos was like before the whale oil changed everything. On the Dreadful Whale, Sokolov will complete 2 new paintings by the final mission, one of Delilah and one of the player character. The time-bending genius and enchanting gaze of Delilah Caldwin is a mouthful of a title, but also slightly less mathematically oriented. Delilah's pale image stares at us with what could be a mixture of disdain and melancholy. Sokolov narrates his memory of her as someone deeply wounded but also tragically twisted. His regret at his own part in what she's become can be seen in the portrait. If Emily is chosen as the protagonist, the other painting is The Majestic Wisdom and Amaranthine Beauty of the Empress. Not only a long but overly sentimental title, as Sokolov now abandons his title gimmick entirely. The painting is the same in low or high chaos, her scarf mask now lowered to reveal an intense but inscrutable expression that could be interpreted either way, as calculating or vicious. If Corvo is chosen, the painting is The Protector at Home. The aged and grizzled hero of the first game shows every wrinkle and scar of the intervening years spent obsessing over keeping another empress from being assassinated. Whether high or low chaos, he is tired, the eyes revealing the fact far more than the crow's feet or graying hair. This is the face of a man whose daughter has been turned to stone. Undoubtedly, the most visually compelling non-collectible paintings found in the game are the Serkonan Legends. This is a series of subjects and scenes presumably from old Serkonan mythology. Even if we don't know the details behind these stories, the paintings themselves show the basics and, in many cases, give us chilling impressions of their cultural significance. The haunted cliffs of Colero show a ghostly couple floating over the sea, a rare look at a location outside of Karnaca. The knocker at the window evokes superstitious fears of invading spirits, similar to vampires or succubi in our world. The Lost Ship Returns almost tells a whole story in one image, and it always reminds me of that scene in Ghostbusters 2 when the Titanic arrives.
Better late than never.
The Moth King seems at first glance just a tall mound with trees, until a closer look reveals the creature reigning over it, but also almost cowering in fear. Old Sea Beast is positively Lovecraftian, manifesting the Isle's fears of the horrors of the deep and legends of leviathans that defy understanding. Great Tree People is another that requires a second look to realize the horror element. The eye is naturally drawn to the two regular figures atop a large stump. Only in the next moments do you see what towers over them. Night Birds with Owl could almost be hung in the conservatory. The painting itself seems pretty tame compared to the others, but then remember the size of those conservatory owls, and then think what those birds' sharp beaks could do to you. Similarly, the Lepidopterist evokes the image of a mad scientist with the ability to control massive swarms of butterflies, which doesn't seem too terrifying until you remember what flies in Serkonos do. One wonders if there's any connection between this figure and the Moth King. Finally, Duke Lucas' paintings must be mentioned. The man clearly has no skill, and his self-portrait is a testament to this. Though humorous, it's also a dark look into his ego, and you can imagine how many people were forced to praise it for fear of angering him. His attempt at a wolfhound isn't quite as terrible, but he supposedly became so frustrated with his efforts while painting it that he shot the animal. Contrast this with his body double, Armando, whose own attempt is quite different. In Death of the Outsider, we can collect 8 paintings. 6 are by Eleuterio Cienfuegos, the pharmacist who joined the Eyeless and became obsessed with the void, making multiple paintings of his impressions of it. These are the darkest works in the whole franchise, both visually and thematically. His first work, The Summit Illuminated, is located above his pharmacy, and shows not the void but Shinderi Peak, where the entrance to the void is found in the last mission. It's depicted with shafts of light emanating from the cleft peak. Perhaps sunlight, though the direction doesn't seem correct, or maybe symbolizing the power of the void leaking through. 2 paintings, Impression of the Void No. 2 and No. 3, are found on the top floor of Shan Yun's house. One shows void representations of a building merged with void stone, and a solitary figure, likely the outsider, standing in front, looking up at us. It evokes both the central nature of the outsider, but also his distance from us. The other shows a great whale swimming through the void in front of stone formations, with lit windows built into them. We already know whales exist simultaneously in the real world and the void, and this is likely the source of their oil's magical energy density. They're the only living creature we see moving through the void other than the outsider. The lonely rat boy can be obtained at the auction of Cienfuegos' belongings after his death. It shows the boy, of whom we first learned in the Tales from Dunwall webisode, in the void with his beloved rats around him. As the story goes, this orphan living on Dunwall streets during the plague was tormented by other children as well as adults. The outsider granted him his mark, which the boy used to summon rats to punish his enemies, before himself being bitten and dying soon after. This story became famous among the eyeless and the cult of the outsider. Impression of the Void No. 1 can be found in the basement archives of the Dolores Michaels Bank. This is the most unusual of the paintings, showing a large black rectangle hovering over what seem to be stone platforms somewhere in the void. It's not clear what this is meant to represent, but the heavy, dark, oppressive weight of the black slab can be felt through the painting. It could be a depiction of the ritual hold, where a massive column of void stone hangs over the small gap where we finally encounter the outsider among a host of wandering souls. Finally, impression of the Void No. 4 is found on the third floor of the bank's outer atrium. This shows a stony path leading up to a distant area containing a tall obelisk, and lit by a small magenta light, similar to the light often found around an outsider shrine. It somewhat resembles the pathway leading up to the ritual hold, which none of the cultists may enter or else be turned to stone, but once again also resembles the ritual hold itself. Given the number of the paintings, this may be his final, most accurate vision of the void. These paintings depict the void not in the blue hues of Dishonored 1, or even the gray-black tones of Dishonored 2, but in shades of brown, sickly, diseased, more depressing than terrifying or mysterious, and this may be part of what drove Cienfuegos to betray the cult and send its location to the Royal Conservatory just before he was killed by them. Additionally, Sokolov's second painting of the outsider can be collected a second time at the Albarca Baths in the first mission, and Duke Luca's self-portrait can be stolen from a smuggler boat at the beginning of the bank job. There are several non-collectible paintings in Death of the Outsider that add to the atmosphere of the world, and these are similarly of a darker nature than the previous artwork, again created by Pyotr Jablonsky. Some of these could be part of the Serkonan Legends series, though that's not certain. The Grey Ones Gather, for example, shows a figure hiding from and possibly pursued by large grey creatures among rocks. I Am the Birdman and Captain Bunder's Last Ride also seem to depict characters from supernatural stories or legends. The Dawn Patrol seems to show someone leading zombies or weepers over rooftops, though the context is lost to us. An Ear to the Wall could depict some magical phenomenon, but also reminds us of the hook mines we can make use of. Debtor's End is a more mundane but depressing portrayal of life and death in Karnaca, while The Heart of the Void, showing a figure with multiple eyes, ears, and hands, is yet another impression of the beyond, not made by Cienfuegos this time. Once again, the background resembles the ritual hold. What remains of the Jacobis shows Ivan Jacobi's grandfather living among the family crypt after losing everything, and shows how the administrator became obsessed with death and the afterlife enough to join the cult. Finally, 3 Under His Eye portrays the 3 target members of the Eyeless, Jacobi, Shanyan, and Michaels, all of whom have their own reasons for joining the cult, and who protect the twin-bladed knife Billy must obtain. The artwork, and particularly the paintings in the Dishonored games, could fill a whole gallery in the real world. They are the actual work of real, talented artists who lent their own unique styles to the visual feast that makes up the world of the games, bringing it to life in a way that higher polygon counts and ray tracing and generative whatever could never accomplish. They add not just detail, but culture and history and reality to an entire civilization. In a series where the clash of the magical and the physical are so central to gameplay and immersion, these works of in-game art form a bedrock foundation of why they will continue to be played and loved for many, many years to come.